You're listening to the Journey podcast. Are you intrigued by the idea of using alchemical principles to bring about positive shifts and holistic healing? Join us today as we explore the connection between alchemy, nature, and the pursuit of well-being. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Today is World Mental Health Day, and this is a special bonus episode. In this episode, we delve into the intriguing realm of alchemy and the concept of living in alignment with nature. Our conversation explores the profound idea of harmonizing our lives with the rhythms and wisdom of the natural world. Throughout our discussion, we uncover the transformative potential of alchemy as a metaphorical and practical approach to personal growth. Our guest sheds light on the significance of observing and adapting to the cycles of nature, both internally and externally. By tapping into this ancient wisdom, we can cultivate a deeper connection with ourselves and the environment around us. JJ Stenhouse is known as the Practical Alchemist and has her own radio show, Alchemy 1.01, on UK Health Radio. She also co-hosts Hurt Less, Live More on the same network. JJ is an energy master and coach who enables people to embody their true selves by clearing external influences for their energy field and living in line with nature. JJ is also a public speaker, podcaster, writer, and best-selling author. Her first career was in journalism, then communication skills training, before she was able to follow her own unique path. Here is my interview with JJ Stenhouse. Hi, JJ. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because alchemy, living in line with nature, is such an interesting topic for holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Petra. It's really lovely to be here and to talk about alchemy, because it's not all about just sitting in a lab like the old alchemists were portrayed as doing and trying to turn lead into gold. It is about transformation, but it's a little more than that, in fact.
That sounds really intriguing, and I'm glad that you're here to talk about that because we have never spoken about this before on the podcast, so this will be an interesting episode. So do you want to share a little bit about yourself and how you came to do what you do with our listeners?
Oh, well, we could talk for hours about this, but we only have a few minutes. I'm so old now. My life has been full of twists and turns, but okay, so in a nutshell, I have always been interested in health, and I've always been aware that I had a way of working with energy and that I was also clairvoyant, clairsentient, and clairaudient a little bit. So, I used to see ghosts when I was a child and that sort of thing, and they were borne out when I was much older by people saying, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, yes, But the interesting thing was that my family didn't dismiss that. That was normal. I'm Scottish. In Scottish and Irish culture, the other world and that psychic side of life is fairly normal, or always was. Anyway, you have to remember I am a bit old and maybe not so much these days. Yes, I was born with an issue. I was born with the cord around my neck and was a blue baby. So I was put into an oxygen tent at birth. And my story of all of this is actually laid out in the book that I've contributed to, Voices of the 21st Century, Conscious Caring Women Who Make a Difference. And it's the story of how I had to deal with my own health issues, and so therefore became really aware of health and healing, but the natural way of health and healing. And that is because having been in an oxygen tent, not breastfed, not coming down the birth canal and getting all the goodness that you get into your gut down the birth canal, I ended up, and then being a sickly child and having endless antibiotics, I ended up having a real problem with my gut, which kind of manifested as a histamine problem. And of course, years ago, when this manifested, nobody knew about these things. Nobody really talked about the gut, and nobody talked about histamine as being quite fundamental as one of the things that really helps our bodies tick along. So I had a rather unfortunate experience with a consultant at a hospital who decided that I might have some very, very obscure disease. And he decided to inject me with a little bit of something. And then, as he said, take a nick out of my arm and test it. What I didn't realize was that he was going to give me a local anesthetic and take a huge scalpel to me and saw out a part of my arm and give me 3 massive stitches, the scars of which I still bear today, 50 years on or more. And of course, I didn't have it, whatever that was, I didn't have it. And what was going on was that if I took any kind of over-the-counter medicine, any kind of prescription medicine, I would swell up like a balloon. And if any of you have watched The Muppet Show, I looked like Miss Piggy. So not great for a 20-year-old who, is a bit conscious about looks and that sort of thing, but it also didn't feel great. So that kind of kickstarted my holistic journey to health and well-being. So fast forward many, many years, I also was able to, all through the years, I was able to work with people's energies and help relieve people's pains and that sort of thing. Could scan bodies and see where there was an issue in a body. Fast forward many years, many trainings and different modalities, different healing modalities, different energy healing modalities. I still come back to what I do intuitively and naturally. And that is, I create a space where the body can heal itself. So where the body feels safe enough to heal itself. So that's one side of it. But then coming back to what we actually put into our bodies, that's just as important. And living your life in line with nature really means being conscious of what you're doing in the world, how you're living in the world, your footprint on the planet Earth, and also what you're putting into your body and into your mind and into your environment. So it is, in that sense, a totally holistic approach to living and well-being and healing. So when you combine the two, when you combine the living as naturally as possible with some added help of clearing out some of the energy that's built up in your body from, thoughts and anxieties and all sorts of things that lodge in your body, then you've got a great formula for well-being.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And I find this so amazing that you have this gift that you have been able to use to do this energy work with, and that your family was embracing that at such a young age also. What a lovely backstory to where you are now. And I am very curious why people call you the Practical Alchemist, because it does conjure up these images that you're in a basement somewhere trying to change the elements. So what does that mean? What does that look like for you?
Well, think of it this way. Alchemy is about transformation. Alchemy is transforming something that in the old days they considered to be not particularly edifying, not particularly wonderful, into something which everybody really aspires to have, and that's gold, right? They call me the Practical Alchemist because I help people transform their lives, and I work on myself all the time as well, transforming my life more and more and more to get to that golden frequency within us all. But I do it by offering practical steps. This isn't spiritual. This doesn't need any belief system. All it needs is for people to take practical stock of where they are and practical steps to move to another level and transform their lives. So the alchemy part is about transformation. And the practical part is because I'm not talking about anything which is anything less than absolutely practical steps that everybody can take.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And it sounds like you really meet people where they are at and find out, what it is they're struggling with and what their challenges are. to give them a path forward and into that transformation, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, yes. And it's a path that anybody can take.
Mm.
Now, is it always easy? Not necessarily. And we all have different challenges in our lives. Heavens, I have had my fill of challenges over my life. I know how that is. And, you have your ups and downs as well. But the practical alchemy approach to life, it really helps you with the foundation of life that will see you through these challenges, help you through any amount of challenges, health challenges, all kinds of other challenges that we face. A lot of people are suffering with mental health problems, mental health challenges. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not even a psychotherapist. I have trained in certain therapeutic modalities. However, the work that I do can do to help people who are maybe depressed, maybe feeling anxiety, any of those levels of things, is I can help clear the way for them. Sometimes I believe these things are caused by it's almost like a blanket has been placed over you. If you've ever felt depressed, and I have in my life and have come through that now and don't feel that so often these days. And depression isn't just feeling a bit down. Depression is a real kind of difficult thing. And in fact, I talk about that a lot in a weekly radio show that I do with a Los Angeles psychiatrist called Dr. Mark Goulston. We talk about depression a lot in that. He's a suicide prevention specialist. And what I say is that it's almost tangible. Depression is something that it weighs you down and you almost feel like it's suffocating. And, really, the word depression means to push down, doesn't it? So you really feel that and you almost feel paralyzed. Well, sometimes I believe that there's an energetic component to that. So if we can work on that as well, that can help. But, obviously there are always lots of different reasons for somebody to have certain conditions. So it's looking at all of that. And if it means that somebody should see a specialist like Dr. Mark Goulston, then fine. But I do believe that a lot of people with mental, and you see, this is how I came out of it as well, is that I worked on a certain energetic components within my body that needed to go. And once that had been lifted, I felt a lot more able and capable of carrying on with my life.
That's a really interesting perspective, because most of the time when you are suffering from mental health challenges, energy is not the first thing that doctors look at. And it's often not a component that gets addressed at all. So that's a very, very important point that you're making. That could be a component of everything that's going on, and it could provide healing for people as well. And yeah, that's very interesting to look at it that way. Now, when we talk about physical ailments, also, when people, they may stem also from mental health challenges, but if people come with physical ailments and they're just not feeling at ease, they feel disconnected, they might have pains in their body. Where do you start with that? Do you look at that from an energetic perspective as well? That's the first step that you take. And where do you go from there?
Well, look, it's got to be a multi-angle approach, really, because if you have something like a pain, you really have to look at what the cause of the pain is. Sometimes it's an energetic thing and sometimes it's a physical thing. Everything is energy, though, I would say, but there are layers, there are levels of energetic approach. So sometimes if somebody isn't well, it means that they need to change their diet. I mean, for instance, quite recently, I was working with somebody. There wasn't anything that I could see specific with them. But then afterwards, I said, you need to get more wild food into your diet. Go out and forage, go and pick some nettles and have some nettle soup or something. You need something like that in your diet. And she'd been to see her doctor and had some blood tests done. And in fact, she was low, was it in iodine that nettle is rich in? It was one of the elements that nettle is very rich in anyway. And I thought, well, there you are, you see. Sometimes just intuitively, I can see exactly what a person's body needs. So it can work that way. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I just sense these things, and they, more often than not, in fact, help people. I have another client who has to take warfarin, the poison, basically, because she has an artificial heart valve. And I just regularly give her a session to rebalance her body because sometimes her body gets to the point where it says, no, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to have to be dealing with this warfarin. Obviously not like that. Bodies don't talk like that, but you get the picture. And we do a little session and calm everything down, and she rebalances very nicely. So, things like that. But also, the other day I worked with somebody who obviously, there was a lot going on around the throat and the neck. So clearing that and the heart, and there had been some, I hadn't realized beforehand, but there had been some issues around grief and loss. So we cleared that. But the throat was quite interesting, because the next morning she phoned me up and said, what did you do to me? I said, why? She said, I have just absolutely let rip. I've just really gone off on one. And I don't know where that came from. I said, well, it came from you. Because you had been holding back for so long, and that was the issue in your throat. You needed to voice what you needed to voice. And she laughed and agreed and said, yes. She said it was just a bit of a surprise.
You never know what comes out when you start rebalancing and opening up those energy centers to flow. That's very, very interesting of the things that can happen.
Yeah, exactly. But it's safe, that's the thing. It's safe. And what I always say to people is, look, I'm not healing you as such. All I do, see, the body is an amazing organism. The body is absolutely, our bodies, human bodies are absolutely capable of healing themselves. That is built into us. But what happens is that all kinds of external influences come along and they block that healing capacity. And sometimes you don't feel safe to go into that state where you can heal yourself. So you need somebody to come along who can give you that safe space where your body can say, oh, yeah, I'm okay now. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I get it. Let's just let go of all of this and let's just heal. Good, fantastic. And that's kind of what I do. And I use in my mind a golden frequency. I use a golden energy in my mind to create that space. So again, it comes back to the alchemy, to create that space where people can transform themselves, their bodies, from having these issues, whatever they are, these blocks, these, whatever you want to call them, to being a lot more balanced and coming back into homeostasis.
Yeah. And I would imagine that in today's world where we are quite stressed, we have so much going on, this is something we all need. We need to rebalance, reground. We need to find our centers again. And such an important part of feeling well and staying healthy.
Yeah, and grounding, you're absolutely right. Grounding's really important. And so how do you ground? Well, again, this is part of the practical alchemy or personal alchemy. You can ground yourself very easily, regularly, just by taking your shoes off and walking on the earth, literally grounding yourself. Or go into a forest or somewhere where there are lots of trees and just soak in, because the trees are giving off these almost like essential oils all the time, which will relieve your stress. And you'll also be more grounded. But another thing that you might not think of as grounding, but which is, and I do this nearly every day, I swim in the sea nearly every day, and that is hugely grounding. And when you go into the water, any body of fresh or sea water, wild water, I'm not talking about a swimming pool with all kinds of chemicals in it. And I'm not talking about any water that might be polluted either. So we have to have a bit of discernment here. But when you launch yourself fully into a body of water like that, you can almost feel, I feel any stresses and tensions just falling away. And you can even do a little process in your head whereby you say to your body, I allow all the stress that's being held in my body to just float away on the tide here. It's so good for you. I have friends who I regularly meet up with for a swim. And again, only the other day, one of them said she had been very stressed and we were swimming and she said, oh, I can almost just feel everything just floating away from my body. It just takes all the stress away. And I said, yeah, exactly. So if you can do that, it's a wonderful way of naturally de-stressing without tablets, without pills, without any pharmaceuticals, just de-stress naturally.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, I can feel what you're saying because I live near the Atlantic. So we visit the ocean frequently as well. And I know what you're saying. When you kind of step into that water, it's almost like a robe that just comes around. It washes everything off that's on you, around you, and you just feel this peace in the water. Yeah, I love that feeling. So I highly recommend that if people do have nice freshwater lakes or they have the ocean. I mean, not everyone lives near bodies of water, but if you do, it's definitely a very special way to find grounding.
Exactly. And if you don't live near a body of water, just take your shoes off and have a little walk on some grass in a park without your shoes on. That'll help ground you.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. I love these ways of naturally rebalancing and finding our health because, like you said, the body really is capable of doing all of that on its own. It just needs to have the space and maybe the right frequency to start on that. So,
yes, the frequency is very important. Yeah, that's absolutely true. The other thing about living in line with nature and eating natural food, eating organic food where possible, eating food that hasn't been corrupted by pesticides and chemicals, steering clear of ultra-processed food and eating natural, good food, is that the chemicals and all those other things disrupt your frequency. Drugs disrupt your frequency. Alcohol disrupts your frequency, all these things. And yeah, okay, maybe they're enjoyable. Yeah. And certain hamburgers from a certain hamburger chain might be enjoyable now and again, but think of what's in them, especially if you're in North America, let's just say. So it is about allowing or helping your body to raise its vibration, raise its frequency in a natural way. And you see, here's the thing as well. You can go for a healing with any healer and they might help you in the short term, but how often does that come back? How often does that issue reappear? Because you're not taking the care to allow your body to embody that frequency that you need to embody in order to be well and reach that sort of gold standard of well-being. I'm not perfect. Absolutely not. I remember seeing a friend in the village that I live in the other day, and I'd just been to the bakery and she saw me with a couple of paper bags with things in. And she said, I hope those are healthy because, I'm known as a health freak. And I said, no, actually they're not. But, I just felt like it. And once in a while, you just have to go for it because you don't want to deny yourself stuff either. There's an energy that goes with that that's not particularly great. But you do want to be feeding your body in an optimal way so that you can embody the energy that you need, the frequency that you need to be well. And so, my work helps people do that as well. Although how many actually follow any guidelines that I might give them about healthy eating, I don't know. I will say that, at my age, so I was about 20 or so when I first had, that, let's just say, issue with the hospital consultant that I talked about earlier. So we're nearly 50 years on now, and I feel healthier, happier, and in every way better, I think, than I ever did when I was that age. So what does that say? And people look at people my age and they think you should be over the hill. Well, no, I'm nowhere near. And the other thing is belief, right? If you believe you're going to be over this age, then you are going to be, but you don't have to be. And also just thinking about older age or, as we age, we really do have to put things in place early on because how you experience, let's say, your later years has a great deal to do with how you've treated yourself and your body in your younger years. So start looking after yourself now.
Yeah, that's a really great point. A lot of people wait until something scary happens to get that message to really take care of themselves. They have a health scare or have a disease they have to deal with before they really sit down and say, wow, I need to change things. So it's much easier to address that earlier on before any of that happens and really take care of your body and your mind. And I think it is definitely possible nowadays. Many of us have access to good organic food and a lot of us have access to natural products and supplements as well. So, and there's the internet where you can order as well. So I think there's a lot of connection nowadays where we can make that possible and even eat a lot of farm to table or even farm in our own backyards. So there's no reason not to take care of yourself. So.
No, grow your own food if you can. If you don't have a garden or a yard, you can get little microgreen growing, will fit on a windowsill. You can grow tomatoes and chili peppers on a windowsill. You can do all sorts of things. Start growing your own, start creating your own food. And yes, the other thing to remember is that what you put on your body is as important as what you put into your body. So if you're using cosmetics, let's say, which are full of harsh chemicals, what is that going to do to you? If you're using soaps and body oils and shower gels that are full of all kinds of hormone disruptors, which a lot of them have had, less so now, I think, but certainly that was, a big thing a few years ago, then, think again, read labels. And if there's anything on the label that you don't understand, don't buy it. That's my rule of thumb, right? But also, I take it even further personally. I can walk into a supermarket to buy some food, walk along the shelves and walk straight out again. And I might be very hungry, but I kind of tune into the energy of stuff. And even some organic food that's sitting on the shelf in a supermarket, I might go, I can see it's labeled organic, but no, thank you, and walk on. So I'm the person in the supermarket that's standing, looking at food and tuning into the energy. And I'm also the person picking things up off shelves and reading labels and putting things back on the shelf again. So, but this is what we really need to be doing if we're going to be looking out for our health and really moving away from ultra processed anything. Go for natural.
Yeah. And to start that as you're young, like with your children already, and kind of get them educated on reading labels and looking at things in the grocery store and growing their food and making their own foods. It was kind of scary when I heard that at one of the school classes. Kids didn't even know where stuff came from. They didn't know where tomatoes came from, what carrots came from. And there's this huge disconnect with nature and what we put in our bodies. So bringing that back and making sure that even young people are connected to all of that and take that forward into their lives. So
absolutely. And
point.
And I think I was lucky in that I've been a gardener all my life. I think I was lucky in that my parents were keen gardeners, and I used to have my own little bit of garden from the age of, 3, as early as I could garden. And I would maybe just sow a row of seeds, a row of flower seeds, but it was my bit of garden. So I've had that all my life, and it's been such a beautiful thing. So, offer that to your children as well. Show them what it is like to grow life. Show them what it's like, even if it's just flowers. It doesn't have to be food, but show them what it's like to be part of this cycle and to grow life. I think it's a wonderful thing. You learn so much by doing that as a child. That connection. And then, being very aware of things like waste and, your environment and keeping your environment clean and wholesome. And, what cleaning products do you use in the home? An awful lot of those have got an awful lot of chemicals in there which are not good for us. So it is a multifaceted approach to life and how we transform our lives in a natural way as possible. Basically we can achieve all kinds of things. We're hugely powerful beings, us human beings. We are immensely powerful, but we just have to allow ourselves to be.
Yeah, and find those ways to support our well-being and the planet, our health, and put that all together, like you said, in this beautiful circle that kind of comes around and you multi-prong approach it. So I love that. Now, do you work with people also from this practical alchemist perspective? You teach them how to approach lives in this holistic kind of way. What do you offer for programs and services so that our listeners can get a feel of how they could work with you?
Well, right now I am only offering one-on-one sessions. That might change. I'm looking to do some workshops and that sort of thing in the near future. You can listen to my radio show, Alchemy 1.01, on ukhealthradio.com. So that is an online radio station, and the shows are uploaded onto all the main podcast channels worldwide. So I think the top 15 or something, or top 13 podcast channels, so Spotify, Apple, all of these. So you can look out my shows, and I talk about ways of being and doing. I interview people, who are maybe, people from all kinds of different walks of life, but who have a key to how we might change or transform our life for the better, even in the world of business, because we need to be looking at different ways of doing business as well, or working, because for a lot of us, the way we work isn't helping us. It's not healthy. So yeah, I get a whole load of people on the show from all kinds of different areas, all looking at ways that we can transform our lives. So you can get a lot from the radio shows at ukhealthradio.com. And as I say, look for Alchemy 1.01. That's the name of the show. You'll find it if you do a search on the station's website. I co-host another radio show with Dr. Mark Goulston, as I've said, which is called Hurt Less, Live More, which is much more focused on how we can move through all the pain and hurts that we experience in life into really thriving in life. So that's also on ukhealthradio.com.
Amazing. And we will be linking to the shows that JJ just mentioned, as well as to some of the offerings that she has on her site and how you can work with her in our show notes. So be sure to check there for ways that you can get in touch and that you can listen to these wonderful shows that she just mentioned. And this has been another incredible episode. And I really hope our listeners have enjoyed our journey into alchemy and practical alchemy, as you have put it, as much as I have. I've learned so much again in the last half hour, and it has been wonderful chatting with you. And thank you so much for your time and all this wisdom and knowledge that you have brought to us today. Thank you, JJ.
It's been a joy, Petra. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you on. And I really hope we get to do this again and maybe explore some of the other facets of alchemy that we didn't have time to talk about, like you said, business and some of those other parts that go into it. So yeah,
anytime.
Thank you so much. Take great care of yourself.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.